start the episode off with a
I'll
jump
choke
scare.
on the lozenge, and then we'll get going.
And I have to save a life at the beginning of my podcast episode.
That would go viral.
That would go crazy. People would definitely be, I think, proud, but they'd also be concerned at once. Because all my experience saving lives were people choking on cough medicine. I'm actually most experienced in that. It's not video. This is my biggest secret. I'm just now revealing it on this podcast.
What? You are certified in saving lives?
No.
Is
I'm
it
not.
recording?
It is. This is episode number 39. We get the uneven number 39 with a very special guest. Introduce yourself. Let them know who you are.
Oh, man, I'm Kenzie.
Let them know what you do.
We're already re-recording this intro, so here we go.
Third time re-recording because I messed up the other ones.
Welcome to Spotlight Pod.
God.
My name is Kenzie. I am an art director and creative producer, and that's what I do.
We had a fun episode here for you guys. If you haven't had enough fun already, we had a really fun episode. I think we chopped it up about what Kenzie's up to, what kind of project she's in, and I think at the end of it, we're talking about project management. And yeah, that was a whole lore. So enjoy this episode, and yeah, enjoy it. And also don't forget to enjoy the episode.
I was first interested in photography, but if we back up way back up, it was music, it was theater. I grew up a theater kiddo, and I didn't get interested into the visual arts until like my junior year of high school. I got my first DSLR camera. It was a Nikon D40, and so I ventured into my special interest of photography and started taking senior photos of friends. And then I took on some really random weddings, like really threw myself into the whole gamut of photography. And when I moved to, we love to hear it.
Ding, ding. That is the people blowing up.
Oh my goodness. They're like, you have Kenzie Jean on your podcast?
No way it says
ask
that.
Kenzie this. Oh my goodness.
What? That's insane.
I know. Like, what do they want to hear about? What do they want to ask? We're just in photography land right now. So I went from photography to being interested in video, and then video kind of lended itself into doing more brand work. So I was doing social media videos, and then I was working with products, and then I ran into a client who asked for boomerangs, and then I threw myself into the world of stop motion animation. And that's where I really like dove in, found this very tactile joy of a tedious task of like teaching myself stop motion animation. So I kind of do it all now. I do commercial photography, social media, video, and I teach, yeah, and I'm trying to actually get a stop motion workshop off the ground that I've been doing for the last few years at a yearly mini festival in Chicago. They're now expanding into Milwaukee, and so I take this mobile stop motion workshop to this festival every year, and so I'm hoping to eventually offer that as just like a one-off opportunity where I can host stop motion events, teach people how to make stop motions from their phone.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wait, was this your announcement? You had an announcement. You said you were gonna
yeah.
make.
Now did I have an announcement?
Yeah, you did, and then you said hopefully I don't forget it because you're gonna use it for the podcast instead of say it.
Well, that's one announcement. Surprise! We are coming to Milwaukee this summer, June 30th, for Mini Festival. And I will be having a stop motion workshop in Milwaukee.
There you go.
Stay tuned for details. You can follow minifest.fun for more information.
Yeah, heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
Nice.
You really did.
So let's just take a little step back. So it's kind of a lot, but which point in your life did you first find an interest in photo? Like how early on?
So, 8th grade, I would say.
Okay.
Or was it 7th grade? Do you know when
Middle school.
Yeah, in middle school, I chose photography as a career project and, did the math. And on average, photographers only make like $34,000 a year. So pretty accurate.
Was that
I'd
math
say.
you found then, or where did this math come from?
I'm pretty sure it came from like Wikipedia or a Google search and just find
Wasn't
the average.
Wikipedia like the most unreliable source back then because people could change the like wording on the site?
I don't even know if it was Wikipedia that I found it on, but I had to make a whole like booklet of like what they made, what types of photography there were, and career project style.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I took a photography darkroom class in middle school, and I ran around with a film camera and got to develop these really awesome photos. And then my friend Alex posted this oh my goodness. Do you remember Facebook Messenger? No, what was
MySpace?
it was before MySpace. It was like the Hotmail Messenger.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a form of Hotmail Messenger. I definitely know what you mean.
Yeah. So my friend used a photo of a flower with water droplets on it as her profile photo, and it was
that.
it was my image. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you. And so like really got that ego boost right away. Somebody using my amazing photography for their
it was your actual photo.
It was a photo that I took, and
I thought you meant like the default photos.
no, it was like one that I took of a flower with water droplets on it, and my friend was like, I just loved it so much. I'm like, okay, wow, you don't know this, but you're kickstarting my entire career. Thank you, Alex.
That's what's up. Sometimes the simple things like that are what draw you into it, but you don't realize it till later in your life, kind of.
Right. But I mean, it was later in high school that I actually ventured into photography when I got that D40. I took a darkroom class again, and then I took a digital photography class. And after that, I'm like, I know I want my own DSLR. All my cool creative friends have these nice cameras, and we're out here modeling for each other. And I need to be that cool creative friend too. And so I would do photo shoots with friends, and we would put like different clothes on and go out and do night photography, or just like play around, like model for each other. And I have this specific image in my mind of like a photo shoot I did at a friend's house where we used gold coins, and we were like, oh my goodness, we are among the treasure. I have no idea, but I really enjoyed playing with the idea of like styling photos and coming up with conceptual ideas, or using fashion as a way to just have fun with friends and take photos. So it just blossomed into something else as I graduated from high school, and I started taking like friends as clients. So I just started small, used what I got. Yeah.
That's crazy. So that is kind of what got you into doing photo. So what got you into doing stop motion?
Stop motion?
Because it's all kind of almost a similar process in a way, to a certain degree.
It is, yes, but a lot more tedious and tactile. Yeah, it's a very delicate process. So I was working for a brand in 2017, a well-known cosmetic brand, and which brand? Drop it. It was Yes To. They have their face masks available in Target, and they're located in California. Thank you, Yes To, for kickstarting my stop motion career. All right, so it was interesting because, do you remember Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, the song Home?
I remember that song very well.
There was a couple that did a stop motion video, and it was like an engagement announcement, but they did a whole stop motion video to that song, and I thought it was the cutest thing. And fun fact, I was married once. I was engaged once. None of that still stands. But when I was engaged, I wanted to make this all out like music video similar to the Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros home video. And so that was my first like fascination with stop motion beyond like seeing a stop motion flip book when I was a kid and like being like, oh my gosh, how are these characters running and moving while the pages are turning? And so I was always fascinated with that frame by frame element of animation. I just didn't really know it yet.
Interesting.
So when this brand asked me to do a boomerang, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like the boomerang feature on Instagram where it's just like,
you're like, cool, I'll just tap a button, I'll be good.
Right. Like, do you want me to charge you to take these photos on my phone and like deliver these product boomerangs? And they're like, no, like individual images. I'm like, oh, so you mean stop motion animation? That actually consists of this. And I just totally overeducated the client and, you know, over-explained things in a way to get more money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's always the way to it.
I have no idea what to charge. So I think maybe I charged maybe $400 for my first stop motion, which is pretty good. But it took me 8 hours of editing. Like I shot it and it was, I remember 2 cotton balls, some micellar water, and it was this bowling concept. So I lined up the micellar water tubes and then I had the cotton balls going down the bowling lane and knocking them over.
Oh my God.
And so that was my first stop motion concept, and it took me 8 hours of editing to learn how to put it together and animate it. And just like tinkering around in Photoshop. I just taught myself because I knew it could make me more money, and that was my motivator.
I'm like feeling the pressure of your 8 hours right now after you just said
like,
that.
What the heck? Like, do I have to mask here, or is it just as simple as like going into the motion workspace and like bringing these in as layers? As simple as that, you know?
Yeah, it's simple.
Just like easy, guys.
That's
just
wow.
teach yourself Photoshop real quick.
Some light work.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And to this day, you're still doing it. It seems like, and it's cool that you had that experience and you're still doing it, because I know a lot of people that would have had that experience and would have let go of it really quickly.
Gosh. You'd be surprised. Like, I'm not a patient person. I want to see my result like that. Like,
oh yeah, same.
I mean, we live in
we got AI.
Yeah, we got AI now, and maybe I should have AI edit my stop motion videos next. But that's actually a great idea.
Don't spill the beans early. Come on.
Okay.
AI doesn't exist, I swear.
So, I am not a patient person. I get frustrated easily while I'm editing, but money is a big motivator for a lot of creatives. And so when you're given the opportunity to be paid for a service, and even if you don't know how to do it, like, it's the process of like just starting and teaching yourself how to get from point A to point B, and like that struggle in between is like how you learn. It's like all in that struggle. And so yeah, it took a while to get the hang of it. And, you know, even some months that I've like stepped away from like my studio equipment, I'll come back and try to edit a stop motion, and it will still like take me a little bit to like get back in the groove of things. So it's like I'm glad that I'm still at it, but I'm like, dang, I gotta keep practicing at this, because it's like no joke. You could just bring in images and put them into a cute little like video timeline and speed it up, but it's not often like that simple. So I don't know. I enjoy it. I made it through, and I'm like hoping to keep on using stop motion as a service to offer to people within this like crowded space of UGC marketing content. I think it's a valuable asset to have, or digital asset to have in like any marketing plan. And
I've said this before, but I think a lot of this stuff is still relatively new. I mean, if we just go back even 10 years, if I remember when I first started doing a lot of this stuff, and you can probably relate to this, like even if you go back to 2015, 16, when you had a camera, even people were like, "What? Like you got a camera?" And it was a whole nother field back then, and now we're in a time where it's like every Joe on the street kind of has one, but now it's the difference is like, can you actually do the project and can you do it well? And now it's kind of a fight between that, and sometimes not even. But one thing that I think, another reason why I have you on here is because, like I said at the beginning, you have a lot of different interests. And one thing that a story you told me about, which I want you to talk about, was how you got into shooting video as well. Because I was able to relate to that story a lot, and I found it very interesting. So, yeah, I want to hear about that, and then we'll kind of dive into the more specifics of these things.
All right, where to begin? So when I started my photography business, I focused more on weddings and portraits. That's just the type of work that was coming in. And I was following some creators. I had just gotten a smartphone, or like my first, it was like my first smartphone with like a QWERTY keyboard. It would slide out. And I downloaded the Instagram app and was following all of these OG Instagram creators.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were live music photographers, lifestyle photographers, wedding photographers, all over the board. And so when I went to, this isn't too long of a story. Maybe we're going to roll with it.
No, it's really interesting because, I mean, the reason why I think it's interesting to tell is mainly not to cut you off, but just
you're fine.
that a lot of people always ask these kinds of questions, like how did someone get there? What did they do? What did it take? And sometimes when they don't ask it and they just dive right in, they get lost and can't figure out how these people know what equipment's right or what, tripod they should have. And the reason we know these things is because we had our things in the moments in the beginning. So
that gets me back on track, actually. This story is relevant. So I was on my way to a Switchfoot concert. Anyone know that, like, Christian, not Christian band, that not Christian band in the Christian industry? I don't know how to define them. But I was on my way to a concert in northern Minnesota, and I was following their photographer online and the hashtag of their tour, and just seeing all the different photos that people were posting on the internet. And then I posted a couple photos up in Bemidji, Minnesota, and I saw that their tour photographer liked my image, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a legit photographer. Like a real photographer liked my photo. And then
that's definitely something to be proud of for sure.
Right. And so at the show, I saw him bopping his head around in the pit, and I'm like, just as like fangirling the people on set, the people behind like the scenes and in production of the band, as much as I am like John Foreman on stage, like singing to the crowd and whatever he does to just like woo the masses. But I reached out to wait, hold up. I need a bragging rights moment before I
go for it.
Bunny trail into this my whole life is bunny trails. I'm a creative. Just you gotta get used to it. So I posted a photo right after the show. I had just gotten this like Wi-Fi SD card, or maybe it was like a Wi-Fi camera. I forget. I think it was an SD card at that point. And I Wi-Fi sent the photos from my camera to my phone, edited it, uploaded it, and John Foreman of Switchfoot reposted my photo over the tour photographer's photos. What? All right. So naturally, I one-upped this photographer, and he's like, okay, I see you. But it was a really cool photo. It was John Foreman like laying back in the crowd, and the crowd's like lifting him up, but I have his like head and then like him holding the mic just like this, and I'm like straight on like center. It was like perfect moment. And I'm like, this is it. This is
the photo.
Yeah.
You always know when that's the moment.
Know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just have to post it before this dumb tour photographer. Not dumb, but. So I did that.
Timing is everything.
Honestly, timing is everything. You have to be and stay relevant to the moment, and that's what I tried to do. I was ambitious to be seen and noticed by this band and by this photographer, and so he liked it. I ended up following him on social. He followed me back, and then I added him on Facebook, and I started messaging him like, so this is where it gets like kind of scary, because it's like, oh my gosh, this person I look up to now and is in a position, like, how'd they get there? I'm now reaching out to them and saying, hey, I see that you're on tour with Switchfoot. Like, this is like a sweaty email. Like, I'm sweating as I'm sending this. But how did you get to where you are? Like, how are you touring with Switchfoot? That was it. It was that question. Like, how did you get here? And so that blossomed into a whole conversation about like chasing dreams and pursuing passion over profit and or paycheck, and like kind of where we were at in our creative journey. Like, he was at this point where he had just quit a job to go do this. And he was working at Chicago Music Exchange or something.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
But that's how he met all these different artists coming through. That's how he met a member of Switchfoot and just like,
that makes sense,
shoot his shot. And so it was really cool because he invited me up to Minneapolis, St. Paul, where his band, the photographer's band, was recording an EP. And I got to do behind the scenes images of that band, and I got to put my face in front of more people from Chicago. That's where he was located. And then it wasn't until, so that was all like, what, 2014? It wasn't until June 2015. But this is still like, I'm looking at this timeline and it all happened so fast. At the time, I was working at a sewing machine and vacuum store where my husband's family, like, that was my husband's family business. And I was like, all right, well, gotta have some consistent income so I can build up enough money to start my photography business. So it was literally June 1st, 2015, when I quit my job at the sewing machine vacuum store, and I was like, I'm going to pursue wedding and portrait photography. By the way, this bunny trail has now ventured into more bunny trails, but the question is still, how did I get into video?
Yeah.
So
no, this all leads up to it. It's
it
good.
really all does lead up to it. So it wasn't even 5 days after I quit my job to go into wedding and portrait photography that I get a call from this Chicago photographer, tour photographer, saying, hey, I know this is like very last minute and a lot of information and a lot of decisions, but here's what happened. My assistant for this like big conference recap video project that I'm doing just had to back out, and I don't know anyone else who is available this weekend. Like, he knew I had just quit my job. And to be fair, like, freelancers, finding other freelancers, it is very hard because like unless you know somebody who doesn't work a 9 to 5, like, and being available like that quickly, it can be really hard to like get people.
And you have to, like, you're going off a trust basis, sort of.
Right. So he's like, I need to know by like this afternoon, or maybe it was like a day. I don't even know if I got a day's worth of time to like talk it over.
Pretty
like,
instantaneous.
Yes. But like $1,000 for a weekend, it was like coming from sewing machine and vacuum store money. Like that was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. So I got invited to be an assistant, like a second shooter at this
Real
conference.
quick. Was that your first taste of feeling like you could make more outside of doing a 9 to 5, or did that kind of happen before with the motion graphic stuff?
No, that was my first taste of seeing like opportunity in a creative field.
Okay. Continue.
Right. So I was really going off of like risk, quitting my job. I'm like, I just want to put more hours into my own business. Like I was not like, there was no career growth at the sewing, like whatever job.
There's always going to be risk involved with these things. Right. Let's hear about the risk. Let's hear how the risk went.
So the risk was, I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to go and do this conference. And I'm like, and it's video. I'd never done video, but I had the camera gear. I had like a Nikon D600 or maybe D750 at the time. And I was like, but I've never done video. He's like, it's okay. Like, I will teach you on the job. There's time to learn. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that, but let's go. So the client transferred hotels, transferred flights, everything into my name. And it wasn't even like 2 days later, I was flying out to Dallas, Texas to shoot a recap video for a corporate client conference. And so the first day shooting video was quite the ride. I mean, quite literally. I was filming people on bull rides, like they were doing bull riding, and I was learning how to capture that and not mess it up. So honestly, I was given this monopod, the ones with the little legs that you can like use to like push in, and like you can do a lot of different versatile things with it. But great little source of stabilization. I put my Nikon on there. He had me switch it into video mode, and then he's like, all right, based on your frame rate, like we're doing like 24 frames a second, you have to double that in your shutter rate for video settings. And so I put my shutter to 50, and he's like, so since you can't change the lighting with your shutter now, you have to use your f-stop to control your lighting. I'm like, okay, that's easy enough. And then that's easy enough.
You remembered it from photo.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I had the framework already in mind, and since I had done portrait photography and wedding photography, I already had the background and wherewithal to do cinematic style composing framing. And so I wasn't just like going in and like snapping around hoping for the best. I was trained in some elements of cinema. Of cinema. And so
that's really rare. Yeah. I feel like to be, and that's also why I found your story really interesting, because I mean, you do get people along the way, like, you know, I had like mentors and random people along the way that were just kind of like, hey, try this, try that, and it was like bouncing off random people. But to have someone really be like entrenched in what you're doing, to be like, change your settings, do this, get this shot, move here, do that, like that is, I think, a very unique, especially when you're on the spot being paid after being flown out, is a very unique experience. And that's why I'm like very interested in this story.
You don't always get somebody to like be an apprentice for, or like to shadow and be paid for it. There are opportunities that you can go and intern like for free, and they're like, we might use your footage, we might not, but like you're learning. Yeah. So this
was like, no, we're using it.
Yeah, we're using
it. And we're going to show you and pay you.
Exactly. So he was the primary filmmaker, videographer. What?
It's like the reverse. Like normally people are like online being like, what course can I pay for to learn how to shoot video? Or like, how many hours can I pay you to teach me? And you're just like, you had
It's
an
like,
experience.
let me pay you. I'll teach you along the way. Let's go. I'm like, okay.
It's such an interesting. So continue where
It
you
was
left off.
okay. So Dallas, Texas, these corporate CEO people were celebrating all their victories from making big sales the last year, and so they got to experience some Texas hoedowns and some barbecue and whatever. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
oh yeah. So honestly, I loved that I didn't have the pressure of like, okay, this is somebody's like saying their I do's and I gotta not fuck this up. Bleep. All right. And I got to just run around and get B-roll and location exteriors and like candids of people's faces and expressions and just get all of this extra footage because I wasn't the main like cinematographer, filmmaker, videographer for the event. So I had less pressure. And this first day of the conference was all just like, we're having fun. The second day of the conference was more like people speaking, people going to different outlets, people talking to each other. But I had to still grab content for that. And I was the main videographer that day because the way they had it set up, and this was honestly, I look back, it was the greatest like step into just like on the job training because you don't often see a video until 2 weeks to 2 months after it's filmed.
Oh yeah.
And the way that I was learning was like shooting, dumping footage. He was editing it together into a timeline for a same day recap video.
Oh my God, that's so nerve-wracking.
So he was like framing the timeline in this like small little room that they gave us to put all our gear, and I was running and gunning. We should probably like. It's really hard for me because I feel like in like creative speaking terms, shooting and like gunning, like these are just things that come out of my mouth, but I feel like that's like very sensitive these days.
There was a point in time where I actually got, I think it was like a Instagram ban or something during lockdown remember when everything went all crazy with politics and all that.
Yeah.
I said something, like the protests. I put on my Instagram story, like it was something like, here's something I was shooting yesterday or something along those lines. And I just put the word shooting in there and they clapped me and said,
Ooh.
like, this is like a warning. If you do this again,
Do not say
like
that.
whatever. And it was like a whole, like, do not say this. And finally, after everything kind of passed, then finally I was allowed to say, look at what I shot yesterday again. But I was like, wow, that was interesting. So I know what you mean, but I also feel like people have moved beyond that at this point. I think most people get it.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit past it now.
I'm still trying to think of another word like shaping and taping. I'm like, what's
shaping and taping?
It's not running and gunning. It's shaping and taping. It's
filming and chopping.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was out there scooting and tooting.
Scooting.
You're darn tooting. I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was scooting and tooting. And he was editing.
Speaking that Western language. Oh, yeah.
I can't go on like this.
You are the most Texas guest we've had on this podcast, for sure.
Well, you're welcome.
That's a joke. That is a joke, in case anyone's wondering.
Well, I am from Austin.
Are you actually?
Minnesota. So anyway, I learned really fast, and it was awesome, but it was also nerve-wracking and not nerve-wracking at the same time. It's just like when you are put into a position where something is expected of you, it's like that self-doubt just melts away and you have an expectation of yourself and a level of confidence that comes through, like whether or not I do this right, I'm going to do my best, and my best is good enough.
Yes, that's the attitude.
Yeah, and that's the attitude I take towards a lot of different shoots. Even now, as I'm more experienced, I'm like, you know, I can't go in with an attitude of perfectionism. Otherwise, I'm automatically going to disappoint myself or come off as like not confident. And then I feel like when you show your lack of confidence, that people around you are less confident in you.
Yep, 100%. And people know it. They know it right away. And I think that is kind of also, it's a good takeaway you've had from it all, because I think between doing, you know, you were doing stop motion, doing photo, doing video, I think you've had that. It's a good mindset to have through doing all those things, because you are at the end of the day doing things for other people, and especially with photo and video, you're working right in front of people. And the second you're like, well, how about, I don't know about this, and like you start wandering off, people see right through that immediately. And another thing too is there's always a reason why these people hire people like you, because they're like, she knows what she's doing, she has the creative mind, and as the client, they're like, I don't, so that's why they have you in the first place. I think it's hard for a lot of people to remember that. I guess that would be a good thing to dive into a little bit, is like, what projects do you think you've had in the past, that has there been anything in the past that you had that experience with that you now have learned from?
Trying to think. Maybe not a specific project comes to mind, but as I've been getting better at sales and selling my services, money can often be a really hard part and vulnerable part of the process of, like,
for sure,
pitching yourself. And so this just happened the other week. We are all learning and growing every step of the way, and no matter how experienced or how many clients you've had, you still, self-doubt still comes in, even if you don't even see it. So
was this that number story? This is a good one. This is a good one, I think, where you said one number but you meant the other number.
I will share that story, but I'm going to, this is a different story.
Okay, it's a different one. Okay.
So I was pitching a service to a client, and usually in my production-minded brain, I'm like, okay, I'm going to need a tether tech or a DIT, or I'm going to need a lighting assistant, or I'm going to need a stylist or wardrobe, or I'm going to need to get models. And this is how much market rate they're going to need to be paid. So in my producer brain, I am like, oh, and this is the value that I'm going to add into this sale. And I'm going to tell my client everything that I'm going to do for them, blah, blah, blah. And that's what's going to sell this awesome production. Turns out, my friend told me, like, wait, why are you including all of this production info into your pitch? And I'm like, well, because that's what's all included in the package. And then they're like, yeah, but it makes you look like not confident. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, when you over-explain every detail, they think that, like, that comes off as questioning yourself on, like, your worth. And I'm like, whoa, I never thought of it like that. I thought it was like a value add. And so it was really hard for me to go into my next sales call like this. But all I did was have 4 slides ready, like a bit of who I am, what the services I'm offering, and then using these as, like, conversation points, and then leading with like value and turning their pain points into my solutions, and learning sales, but not including that whole production deck and layout in the very first consult call because you're going to overwhelm the client. And so what I learned was that I can carry myself alone without showing all of the things I'm going to do after they hire me in that big budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that before. So that was something else. And I'm like, how many clients might I have lost by overwhelming them with so much information from the get-go that they're just like, oh yeah, we just want somebody to like do the thing and not tell us what they're doing.
Your work always speaks for itself. And honestly, that's actually the first like I've heard something like that, and I think it's a good lesson for people. I don't think you'd be like the first to do that. I'm sure plenty of other people either do that or have done that. And the thing that made me laugh when you were saying that was I was putting this into another perspective of like, okay, what if you sat down at a restaurant and on the menu was like, they're like, and this chef, like the description below it was like telling you what chef was making it, what pan the chef was using, what brand meat the chef was using, like
what line cook was going
fork.
to cook your meat.
You'd be like, bro,
Yeah,
I just want the food.
Yeah. How much the butter costs that they're going to be using in that pan.
Where were those eggs imported from?
Right. Some people care.
Were they, free range? Were they?
This is farm to table quail, grass fed.
You'd be like, is this food even good anymore? Why do I need to know this?
And the grass is grass fed too. It's organic blades. Organic blades.
Well, I do think as much as there's a joke about it, not oftentimes, but every now and then I should say, yeah, I'll get someone that even though they've seen my work and they know what it is, they'll almost be like kind of a techie person, and then they'll be like, okay, wait, what camera? And then they'll start diving into be like, wait, what lights? I'm like, wait, lighting? They're like, no, I'm just curious, like what lights? And then I'll have to like run through everything. Oh wait, so how do you like? What are you gonna like mount it on? And like start asking questions like that. And I've definitely had that happen, but I think it's important to just not answer it and be like, look, this is what you saw. This is why you called me. This is what you're gonna get. And the second you remind them of that, they're like, oh okay, and they kind of like pull back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you get every now and then you get someone's techie like. This one, I'll never forget this one shoot. It lives rent-free in my head. But one of the first times I ever did this studio shoot that was done to a click, I knew what I was doing. I knew how the process goes. But right when I got to the shoot, the drummer was like, oh, yeah, I know everything about cameras. Like, I film this band, I do this. And he was like, are you shooting in log? And at the time, I didn't know what log was. And I just stared at him. I had like a blank stare on my face, and I was like, I didn't know what to say. And he's like, I think your camera has that in it. And I was shooting on a Canon C100, and I was like, you're speaking another language. And I remember he showed me, he's like, oh yeah, it has this. You just shoot like that. And I shot it in like a darker setting, and it just took so much extra work.
To edit?
Yeah, but then I was like, it was so painful. But I remember that moment was a moment where I felt suddenly not confident in what I was doing.
It's always when people question you.
Uh-huh. And I was like, ouch. In some ways it felt embarrassing at first, but when I look at it in hindsight, I'm like, I'm glad he said that, because had he not said that, I don't think I would have ever, maybe eventually someone would have said it to me, but it was early on enough in what I was doing that it helped me for like the stretch of time after that to look into it and go home and be like, okay, this is what it is, and totally figure it out. And it was like,
I think it's cool that you're receptive to feedback like that too, because as a creative, I know that ego can definitely get in the way of learning. So when you feel like you should know something and somebody calls you out like, hey, I know this other thing, but it comes off as like you needing help.
Yeah.
I don't need help. Like it can be really hard to let your guard down and know the balance between, the techie person who just wants to ask questions and doesn't really know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the balance between receiving feedback and not internalizing the not knowingness of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that lack of confidence or like the doubt that like I want to get out of my habit of internalizing, and being able to receive feedback in a way that is productive. And but it is awesome when you can have somebody just like be there with you and show you with no judgment of your capability, but to be able to be like, oh yeah, that's simple, like this will make this so much easier.
And I think you got very lucky having that experience right up front, because I mean, I've talked, I'm not gonna go into my rant, but I mean, I've talked about it before, where it's just like I kind of learned off of having a camera and shooting for fun, but then also having random people along the way just be like, do this and try that and that. But the thing that I think is very interesting is that you're still doing a lot of really cool stop motion animation.
We actually had a practice run of this. Like, if this happened, I was going to be like, I am a creative producer. I can do motion graphics. It's just not going to be me. But I did learn motion graphics. I mean, in Photoshop, I have yet to learn After Effects and all of the extra the softwares that make the beautiful transitions and the magical things that you can add to stop motion. So that's where I am on my journey, is just like getting fluid with stop motion.
But you're posting a ton of really cool stop motion things on the internet lately. I've seen on your Instagram, you have some reels that are really cool that you've been sharing. And I'm really curious about that and how you've been sharing it on social media.
Okay. So I've always been inspired by other creators like Kevin Perry and All That Is She and Colette Perry. Not related, but apparently Perry is a popular last name.
Katy Perry.
Katy Perry, you know. My dad's name is Perry. Just
Perry the platypus.
Perry the color.
Got all sorts of Perrys.
Many Perrys. So I was always inspired by the stop motion that they put out. And a lot of it was very lifestyle in like in the environment content, or just bringing objects to life so that they have a different, like they have a personality. Personifying objects. What I did with brands was show the functions and features of products, and what I want to do with my page is animate myself and come up with different magical ideas, whether I'm dancing in my living room but it's shot top down and I'm on the floor and there's props, like maybe it's living room props that are all of a sudden something else. And more recently I did one with different musical instruments. I have these a bell set, a melodica, a keyboard, but they're all just interesting pieces of like interesting piano type things. Yeah. And so I switched them out to the song Flowers by Miley Cyrus. Congrats on the Grammy. And oh yeah. And that's so right. I had my daughter we found the notes that the melody is on, and I tried to line it up to the song. So da 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 da. But then I also shot these flowers coming out behind it, and I tried to mask those flowers coming out of the piano, like underneath the piano switching out. It was a lot of It's
a really cool thing.
But it came out pretty well. I am a perfectionist, so obviously I can look at it and be like, well, I probably would have taken more frames and done this and blah blah blah. But the beautiful part is that I put myself up to it. I struggled through it, and I shared it. I shared it with my community, and It doesn't really matter how it performed. It's just the process of getting creative and like bringing an idea to life. Because as a creative, as an ADHDer, as an ADHDer, I can often have this expanse of ideas. Of course, we always have these special interests as creatives, and we just can't choose the path that we should be on. And sometimes that can be so debilitating because we want to do it all, but we don't have time for it all.
Yep.
And so as artists, we need deadlines. We need to give ourselves deadlines so that we can practice discipline within these projects. And that's what I'm working on currently in my own creative practice, is choosing an idea, deciding and making that idea come to life within that deadline. Whether it's like, okay, today I'm shooting a stop motion, I'm going to post it by Friday. I'm less planned on social media, and I'm more so like, all right, what's the next idea? Let's choose something and let's go through it. And you can post it like whatever. You can follow the trends or see how like the insights of when your audience is most active and post it then and be strategic about it. Or you can take that idea that you've been sitting on and you can start where you are with the materials you have, and you can just do it and post it. And so the thing that I'm trying to do this year is closing the gap between idea and execution. So.
And I think one thing that you do that's at least really interesting to me is that you're doing more projects from home, which is something that I definitely am like aiming towards at some point down the road, because I think that's a really cool thing that you can do, like set up paper and set up your whole thing for different photo shoots for stop motion projects. But then you also are doing portraits that I believe you're starting to offer. If not, you've done a handful of and are going to continue doing that. Hopefully, and so I think that is something that a lot of creatives wish to do as well, is be able to set up something from home and just have people over, because it involves no travel. You can still make a lot of cool photos with people. But what are you working on now as far as that? Is there any particular client that you are aiming towards having, or are you still in the process of figuring this out, or what's that look like?
My start of the year, the theme that I gave myself was systems and sales. So since I've been doing this, it's important as a creative to also focus on the business side and build your skills in business and get better at whatever it is. So since I offer a lot of different services, I wanted to go through and systemize everything, because eventually, if I want to put myself into this thriving creative director role where I delegate a lot of the processes, I need to know how to train people on every step of the process, to whether I'm automating my like emails or whether I'm invoicing or editing. I want to be able to know what part of that process of the service like I can train somebody else to do to free me up.
Yeah, and so
systems and sales were my business focus for the start of the year. And this month it's more client reach out. I'm really wanting to venture into more brand work, but work with models and potentially some fashion brands.
Nice.
Yeah. I honestly am still formulating more of like the dream there, but focusing more on personal projects and producing. I seem to get work, the same type of work as what I'm posting. So since I offered a professional headshot day, I've been getting professional headshot sessions. I have one coming up that's more of a stylized session. So we're going to use like my full 9-foot backdrop and have the sweep out and like It's more of like a full it's a full session where we're going to be styling different looks, and then bringing in, I think the lady wanted some photos with her daughter too, so
Nice.
a variety. I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm taking my whole setup to her house.
Oh, wow.
So going from work from home to set up in your home. And
wow.
that's kind of how I did it when I worked with brands in the past too.
Mm-hmm.
I would do the editorial ads for this music company, and I'd go to different locations and we'd set up instruments and photograph people playing instruments in a home, but it was all with studio lighting. And so then they would put that into like guitar magazines to advertise their product. And so I took more of that approach with my in-home sessions. When the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, work from home sessions. Like it was like photos, digital marketing content from safe spaces or something. I don't know how I marketed it, but it was something to the extent of like, send your product to my house and I will photograph it and a whole batch of deliverables and just do this monthly content arrangement. And so that worked out for a couple of clients, but I feel like there are still clients who really want to be on set. And so I just got to...
What do you mean be on set?
Like they want to micromanage. Did you guys hear that?
I think that is a tough balance for sure. Is like, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before, where it's like the second someone starts micromanaging, especially in the moment, unless you've asked them to, or unless it's something you've talked about beforehand, when it just kind of happens, or if that's like the only way they can operate around you, then at some point, I think one of the hardest parts for me currently is finding that balance of being able to actually tell a client that is like that when it's not something you've agreed upon, to be like, all right, you're not the person I want to work with anymore. Because at the end of the day, you do have to, part of being this is what we were originally saying, right? You can have your own ego, but you also have your own confidence within your own brand to deliver what you started out as and what someone initially called you about. And the second that they micromanage it, it's their own thing, their own brand, their own ways of editing this and that, and it's no longer 100% your craft, and it's their thing, which in some respects is cool when you, like I said, when you agree to it. But when it's not agreed upon and then it reflects your own brand, it's a whole nother thing, and it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like what you came to do this thing for. And it's almost like, I always use restaurant examples, but just when you like deviate a dish even at a restaurant, completely different than what it even is. Like people just be like, no, like that's just not, you can't do that. No. So this is how it comes.
Yeah, it is learning how to say no in an assertive way, but also respecting their needs as a client. So I've had shoots where I've been the director and I have the creative liberty to do what I'm best at, which is, direct and produce amazing photos or videos. And then I've had shoots where, and this is where balance comes in, is when brands do have brand guidelines and it has to be to a certain appeal.
Yeah.
And so I take a more collaborative approach, like, oh yeah, I see, like I can try to do that, like be able to listen to their feedback.
Oh yeah.
But also like kindly no.
It's an interesting balance. Like I said, it's just like, what if it's something that up front you've been given that you're walking into, then there's a level of comfort. But when it's not like that and you still have to implement, I think this is the hardest part of it. It's when people are like, oh yeah, just do what you're good at. But then they're also like, also here's a set of rules.
Right.
And you're like,
what do you really
wait,
want?
what do you want?
Give me a prompt. Just tell me where to go.
Which one is it? Okay.
Like
we're not driving against traffic here. You gotta drive. You gotta go with. I don't know what kind of analogy that is, but it's like you gotta stay in your lane. You know.
I've also had it's wild because you do get a whole gamut of experience in all sorts of different styles of clients. You have clients who will be like, go, we're dumb, you're smart, creative liberty. And then you have clients who are like, we have our brand voice, our brand guidelines, and it has to be edited this certain way to maintain our brand image. And I'm like, got it. And then there's brands who are collaborative, and then there's brands who are like, you know, like
brands or bands.
Brands or bands. Yeah. Who are like brands or bands, honestly, both. Yes. But it's like they trust your creative vision and they are along for the ride. And I love those projects, especially when the budget aligns with the idea and scope of work, because we all know that bands and brands have big ideas.
Yep.
And we have to keep it within what we are willing, the effort and amount of work and editing that we're willing to do. Like bands will come to me and be like, oh my gosh, we love your stop motion work. We want a music video. And I'm like, you do realize that stop motion is like individual frames and your music video is like 3.5 minutes. And that stop motion is like 12 images for a second, right? So like, let's do the math. The math ain't mathin'.
I told someone this story. The other day, and I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest of it, where I had a similar experience where someone wanted me, I think it was a 24-second clip or 30-second clip, but they wanted me to mask out this background of something that was moving that had like 5 or 6 people in it, but it was 24 seconds. And at the time,
so it's individual.
It was individual frame, you know. And at the time I did it, and they definitely paid me, you know, when I needed to do it. But it was one of those things that I did, and I was like, never doing this politely, never doing this ever again. And I recently had someone ask me about it again, and I was like, no. And I explained what I just explained, how you have to go frame by frame by frame. And I was like, in 1 second, there's 24 frames. So times that by each seconds. Like just times that, do the math. That's how often I have to adjust the frames. Like doing even 0.1 second takes at least 5 or 10 minutes. I was like, this is going to be a few $1,000 project here.
Like at that point, just reshoot it and send me the footage. Reshoot it.
Just like reshoot it. And I was like, whew. But
Do we sound like we're just like sassy creatives who don't want to like listen to direction or what?
But I think this is like, at the end of the day, the things we're talking about are very good examples, because I think we've explained how there's different approaches to it, right, in different circumstances. And I think it's a good segment to have, because there's a lot of different things that you learn, a lot of like little finicky things you learn along the way, and these are all examples of them. But I'm curious what, you know, especially now, what do you think has been your biggest takeaway through doing all these different projects? Or not even if it's a takeaway, is there something that you're pretty destined on right now to get going on?
To get going on, I think getting over fear. I don't think that you can get over fear. I think that with every project, you're going to have that same feeling of how am I going to get from point A to point B. And you can either like self-doubt your way into crippling anxiety and, you know,
real
like high expectation and high disappointment, or you can say, I am showing up as my best self and I have the experience necessary to do this, which is why the people trust me to do what what they're asking me to do.
Mhm.
And just like building that confidence, because with every client it is going to be different, or with every project the struggle is going to be different.
Yeah.
Whatever part, you don't know what part you're going to struggle at. You can forecast it in your brain and overthink it as much as you want, but
Mhm.
you might find that a certain part in shooting the project was actually more difficult than actually editing the entire thing you're bringing it together. So just allowing yourself to be present and having confidence that you're going to move through, like just taking things one step at a time and learning as you go, and using the resources that you have, like you can rent a whole studio or get all sorts of equipment, but you can also use your phone. Don't use your phone. Just
Don't use it.
kidding.
Hire us instead.
Yeah, hire us
Don't
instead.
use your phone. Do not use it. I know. I think that's one thing for me that is really difficult now, is a lot of voices on the outside, and people are telling you, like, hire this person to do that, or maybe see if you can have this person on for this, because that's kind of the trend of how this stuff works. You and I do this on our own, and people hit us up and we do these things individually.
Every part of the process.
And a lot of people will look at that and say you're insane. And they'll be like, you should have someone handling the editing. You do the shooting and this person does that. But then you have to start figuring out how you can work that in your budget while still making the same amount. And it's funny because a lot of times when I get calls from clients, the response is more like, oh, wow, you're doing all of that. But yet
Really?
people on the outside are like, you should hire these people. And while those people are correct, they're just following the track of how a business works and how you have employees. And you have people that should be working under you. And I think that's one of the hard things for me currently, is asking myself, should I dive into that world, or should I continue doing it on my own? While I hire out creatives for shoots I need other people on and have people on, it's a matter of figuring out, now, how do I re-budget, and how do I figure out how much I can get for this person? Because I've been in the position of working under someone, and I know very well what it's like to be quote unquote underpaid or not paid what you want to be paid just because you're working under somebody. And that feeling never felt good. I would go home feeling disappointed, and I don't want someone that's working under me to feel that way at the end of the day. And a lot of people look at that and they're going to say, well, who cares how they feel? Just, if they're down for it, do it. And it's like, nah, I kind of care how people feel about themselves. I don't want people to feel gross and be like, this guy's underpaying me every time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing at the moment. I don't know if you have that same.
I have something to say to that, because I've definitely been in the place where I'm doing work for free, or I'm working 11 hours as a PA and only getting paid $150 for the whole day. And so like when you feel so scummy that you just worked your ass off and are getting paid the amount of, like, some 8-hour, what an 8-hour day should be at, like a low effort job. You can feel like pretty low, but then when you start to see yourself as a business who offers these services and you want to offer your clients more, it's almost like you can just bring up, I think we talked about this the other week too, when we got together. I was like, oh, when you need this service, you just say, my team. My team. And instead of saying, I'm just one guy who does all of these parts, you start to put yourself in the mindset of a producer and start delegating those systems and parts of the process to other people. Because one of my favorite parts of being a creative who can, I don't know, miraculously find work from companies and get paid to do what I want to do, One of my favorite parts of that is being able to employ my friends and give my friends work and creatively find a way to bring all of my friends together and collaborate on a project.
Yeah. And I've done that a few times. It feels really good.
Yeah. So when you go into client sessions and say like, or like sales calls, and they're like, we're looking for this, this, and this, stop thinking about it as like a one-man band and start thinking about it as, okay, they're asking a lot, and that means we're starting at a lot, and you just like go forth with that big budget already in place. And so you pitch the big budget, give them the shock, like if they need to be shocked, let them be shocked, because then you can always bring it back down to like, okay, now it's just like me and 2 other people,
right,
instead of just me, you know. And so
yeah, that's true.
So it doesn't always have to be a big production, but when you start placing yourself in those mindsets where you're the producer and not just like the freelancer, then you're able to like establish yourself as more of a business, and,
right,
you know?
right.
And so I think having it definitely is a mindset shift.
It is.
And
it is.
It takes practice. Like every time I go into a sales call this year where I'm pitching prices that are 3 times as much as I've ever pitched, and I'm getting like, I'm closing sales. I'm like, I was worth this 3 years ago, and I was still giving these like $250 to $500 rates when I should have been starting at $10K.
Yeah.
And it's like, you need to see your worth as a creative. And I don't want to go down a slippery slope of being like, okay, yeah, you got a camera, go to any business with your bros and rip them off. Like,
there's a lot of people that do that.
Well, that's what made me realize that I need to start seeing my worth as a creator and a creative producer, because a friend of mine was like, I see people out here doing half the quality of work that you're doing and charging 3 times as much.
Yep.
And I'm like, you're right. I have equipment. I have a whole studio, and I have years of experience, and I've worked with teams, and I'm actually really good at working with people. Like, I'm a friendly person, but I also get the job done. And like professionally, like I need to be seeing myself as that and embodying that. And so I think it's just practicing embodiment.
That's one of the hardest things to get over, for sure, as a creative, to actually fully recognize all these things, like your years of experience, the equipment you have, the amount of time you've spent in classes learning different things, the amount of assets that you have, all these different pieces. What sometimes seems like just you and you being you, and doesn't seem further than that. But once you recognize that, you're like, you have this moment to yourself where you're like, wow, I am worth that. And I think that is across the board one of the craziest feelings, both to realize and to accept.
And then to practice. The practicing, the execution is the hardest part, because at the end of the day, you can sit there and ask yourself, am I really worth this? Am I worth that? But the second you put your own foot down and you're like, this is what I'm worth, and you tell people this is what I'm worth, they're going to be like, all right, cool. And then you'll start finding out people that you can work with, people you can't work with. A lot faster.
A lot quicker.
And it's rejection's okay. I've had clients ghost me. I've had clients ghost me after doing 2 different calls, and it was either too much for them or they went with somebody else. But the fact that I sat through 2 different sales meetings, or I sat through the process and felt that cringe discomfort whenever I myself doubted my own rates, but still sat in my own confidence and pitched them, because I knew that that's what other creatives and other other people were like, that's what market rates were, and that's what I needed to be charging. It felt good. And just recently I closed a really big client deal, and they were just like, they paid half the invoice right away to get going on the project, and I'm like, so this is what it feels like. Okay, let's go. Let's get 5 more.
Yeah, those are the people. At the end of the day, I think one of the conversations I always have with a friend about this is, once you feel that feeling, you're like, okay, this is what I want to be doing because it sends you in the right direction. But then a part of you also feels bad, because then you're like, you almost like, there's a part of you that misses.
It's the grief of like the lost income that you could have had.
And then you start to realize, like, okay, wait, this other thing's a little bit better. And then you start finding yourself down a whole nother path of things.
What do you mean by that? There's other things are better path of things.
Yeah, you find yourself down a path of different sets of clients than you were once used to.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you realize, like, there's this path ahead versus the path that you were on before. So it sends you off into different channels of work.
Totally. And that's why I think it's important to create the work that you want to be doing. And that's what I'm learning is, like, I might not want to be a professional headshot photographer, but if that is easy for me and it pays the bills, yes, I will. I want to be a professional headshot photographer. But what brings me joy is music videos and making meaning out of visuals and symbolism in music, and like bringing together visual concepts to amplify an artist's voice. You know? Yep. So that's what really fuels me, and working together with other creatives who see that same thing and have the drive to like want to light things a certain way, or want to style a scene, or want to find a venue. Like, when I get to be collaborating with others on a production team is when I'm at my absolute best. But I realize the balance between making enough to survive and be able to have income from creative services, and the balance between being able to do my personal work as well, and the things that really fuel me.
You need to still remember to do that.
Right. So that's what I'm learning a lot. Last year I did a performance art piece. So I made a whole wardrobe around the color of the rainbow. It was like a monochromatic wardrobe. I made a music video. I basically put together old and exported old like tracks that I had in Logic, and then I put audio over them, like I spoke over them.
Oh, cool.
And I used the colors of the rainbow as like emotion identification. What's a better way to say this so you can envision it? It was called Under the Rainbow Umbrella.
Okay.
And it was a performance art piece that explored emotion on a spectrum of color. So each color was assigned its own emotion or feeling. And so on stage, I ventured through the emotions, and there was a music video playing behind me. Like, everything, I produced everything, like bootstrap budget, $600. But this was a personal project for myself.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
It brought me so much life, and I'm like, oh my goodness, why did I burn myself out just doing client work? It's almost like when you allow yourself to only make your creative act for money, you forget why you started.
Yes.
Almost. So it's like, oh my goodness, I was curious and playful with friends making up photo shoots when I first started, and now I don't even want to touch or bring out my photo gear because I'm not being paid for it.
Yep.
And so I'm relearning how to pick up my camera and shoot for fun, and I am enjoying it, you know, like there's a lot less pressure when you can make something of nothing, and it really fuels my creative drive, and even like it fuels my professionalism with clients too. Like I come to the job with more ideas and more confidence because I've been playing outside of working. So
Bam. It's almost like you've been on this podcast where that's how I usually end it, with some really good advice. And that was like, I think that's as good as advice as it's going to get for anyone. And it, might seem obvious to some people. Might be like, oh yeah, I just do that or whatever. But it's really important to remember to do that, because you can snap a finger like that, just forget. You can be so entrenched. And I have to remind myself of this all the time. I can forget it in a matter of a day. I know people that also lost track of it. I'm like, yeah, remember to do your thing too. You got to look out for you and yourself. So that's some great advice. And also, before we end it, let them know where they can find you on socials. Let them know what's up.
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at ITSKENZIEJEAN. That's It's Kenzie Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And then my studio page is Kenzie in Motion. So that's also on Instagram if you want to go give that a follow. I'm building that one up. My website is MackenzieJean.com. That's where you can find all of my portfolio work or book me for your next digital marketing content shoot.
Boom.
If you need me to make reels or TikTok videos, I do that as well.
And hopefully we'll be working on some projects in the near future too.
So you can contact our team. And we
How do you say that word?
Team.
I can't say it.
Yeah. Yeah, so me and my team can do that. Or like, I have a guy. I know a guy.
I know a guy. It's not sus at all. Promise.
Or you just use the word like production deck. Like, oh yeah, I'll add that to the production, like the production timeline or the production deck, and you start building out production teams.
We'll get your production deck together. Thanks for coming on and explaining, how your whole adventure has been with this, and letting them know what's up. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people hearing that, so thank you.
I hope so.
Definitely have. Well, yeah, sure this won't be the last. We'll catch you on the next one then.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you for having
it.
me, Max.
No problem. Thank you. Peace.